Welcome to season 4 of the Your Next Move podcast with me, your host, Kimberly Brown. Y'all, I am so excited to be back, but I'm going to give you just a warning that this episode is extremely hard for me to record, but I thought that, now is the time for me to really chat and share just a little bit more about myself. If you listen to previous seasons of the podcast, I had Jessica Hurley on, and Jessica did an in-depth interview about my life and my background, who I am, which was rare. And I feel like I have a desire to share just a little bit more. It's been on my heart for all of 2022 that I've been through so many different things, but I never really share a lot about my life or what happens behind the scenes. I look at the Your Next Move podcast as my place to deliver actionable career and leadership development strategies, period. Don't ask me no questions. You don't need to know about what's going on over here. But I realized that as people, we go through so much all the time. Life is lifing at all times. And sometimes it's important to share. And I think sometimes even just sharing so that other people know that you're able to overcome and still build a life, a career, a business that's important to you while life is life behind the scenes. So I have to start this episode off by saying that 2022 was one of the hardest years in my entire Black life. And most people in my life, even people who I'd consider close family and friends, had no idea what was happening because I've always prided myself in just, going for it. I'm still going to work. I'm still going to do all the things. Nobody needs to know what's going on. But I had 3 major life events that happened that I'm just going to, put it out there and I'll just share. So number 1, separated and now currently divorced by the time this episode goes live. Number 2, I froze my eggs. And number 3, I had brain surgery in May of 2022. All 3 things that radically changed not only who I am as an individual, but it wasn't something that I was able to hide. I think hide from y'all who may not know me in real life, yes, but hide from people who are in my circle. It was really, really difficult. And they honestly left me kind of figuring out how to put my life back together. Now on the other side, I can say that I am the happiest I've ever been. I experience joy daily. I am beyond grateful for my life, for my friends, for my family, for my business, for my career, for so much of my life that I wasn't acknowledging prior to these 3 life events in 2022. And I think a lot of it is because it's forced me to move in slow motion. I think when life hits you, it's easy when you're a high achiever to just keep on gunning it, right? You're already running fast, you're already sprinting. So you slowing down, if you're going 10 miles per hour on the treadmill and you go to 9, it kind of feels the same. But I was forced to slow down. And it really took a lot for me to continue to move forward. And there's 3 big shifts that I wanted to share with you today. Now, on the other side, I believe in sharing from a place of healing. I think it wouldn't have been beneficial to you or to me to be on the podcast for season 3, talking about it as I was going through it. But now from a place of healing, there's 3 massive shifts that I'd like to share with you. Now that I feel like I'm really in a winning season. I'll say that, a winning season. So first and foremost, though, before I go into my 3 shifts, I just want to also share that I've been in therapy consistently. So this isn't something that I sat by myself and I dealt with and I got to this level of healing on my own accord. I've been in healing consistently once a week, every week since spring 2020. I probably don't miss more than 3 sessions a year, maybe at that. I will prioritize therapy. When I recorded the first video season of this podcast, season 2, I stopped recording to go to therapy and then went back to recording. That's how important it is to me. And I think it's been so important to have an unbiased support system that's been able to give me the tools to grieve, to grow, and to heal mentally, physically, and emotionally. And I'm so excited that now I can see the changes in myself through therapy. So I want to just say that because I think with the 3 big things that I shared with you, I don't think that they're necessarily things that I personally would have been able to get through without getting help. And my therapist was absolutely positively phenomenal. So lesson number 1 that I learned this year is that turmoil in one area of your life can make you self-sabotage yourself in other areas, and that's consciously or unconsciously. As a high achiever, I told y'all earlier that I like to keep things afloat, right? Business as usual. The show must go on. However, in March, April of 2022, I joined a business coaching program where they talk about a concept called the double win. And the double win is winning at work or business and winning in your life. For me, I've always taken the approach of I'm going to win in my career and I will figure everything else out. Never about winning in my personal life and in my career at the same time. And my coach quickly was able to make connections based upon my experiences in my marriage, with my health, how that was impacting my business and my decision-making capabilities. And not just from a way of like feeling foggy, but even in second guessing things that I knew to be true and not being able to take action in the way that I needed to. My coach continuously drove home in my brain that I had to challenge myself to really care for myself. I think there's concepts, some people like to call it mothering yourself. I think of it as how do I set myself up for success to make sure that I'm able to thrive? Sometimes caring for yourself can seem like it's a should, right? Like it's natural. Like obviously I know how to care for myself. Like I have an apartment, I feed myself, I have groceries, I'm not hungry, I just took a shower. But caring for yourself when you're going through a lot is so much deeper than that. It takes a different level of TLC to really and truly nurse yourself back to a place where you feel happy. And I think that this was probably the biggest lesson, was understanding that self-sabotage, in order for me to be successful and to continue to thrive, I had to care for myself so I didn't let the bad outweigh everything else that was happening. So lesson number 2, I have tissues here because I feel a little, and we're not going to do that if you're watching on video. So lesson number 2 is probably a really hard one for me, and is that being lonely is a choice when you have people in your community who you can trust. This year was one of the first times where I really and truly needed help. So when I mentioned, I glossed over the fact that I had brain surgery in May 2022. So about 2.5 years ago, 3 years by the time you're listening to this, I was diagnosed with a very rare neurological disorder that caused extreme facial pain. So there were days where I couldn't wash my face, I couldn't brush my teeth, I couldn't speak, I couldn't do a bunch of things. How you saw me talking on a podcast and doing speaking engagements, y'all, I don't know. God, okay? God and drugs, because I had a lot of drugs that helped manage the pain so that I was able to function every single day. I have about a 6-inch incision on this side of my head that, is nicely covered by the hair and the twists. I told the doctor when we had surgery, don't you dare cut a single line of my twists. We can do it without shaving my head. But that surgery, as much as I joke about it, it was serious. I was in the ICU for 3 days. And it took me about 6 weeks to start feeling much stronger on my own. I think when you go through something, especially physically, you need a different level of assistance. And for me, that was really hard. I'm someone where I get sick, you don't see me. But I needed someone to come help me get my groceries. My best friend was in the hospital with me for those 3 days. I needed people to take a walk with me because I was still unsteady on my feet and I couldn't just take myself around the way I needed to do. I need to tell my neighbors that I may be walking in the hallway trying to build up my strength. And if I call you, it's not because I need a stick of butter. It's because I may have actually fallen and I actually need your help to get back up. And one of the things I worked on in therapy is being able to articulate what I needed and asking for it. My podcast producer, Jessica, said that she noticed over the past year, one of the things was that when she asked me how I was doing, I actually told her how I was doing, which was new for me. I'm one of those people like, how are you? Girl, I'm good. Life is life and doing what I got to do. But I actually said like, no, I'm not that good. Today's a really hard day. I'm really not feeling good today. I think I may need this. My assistant was the calendar guru of blocking my time to make sure that I had energy to pour back into myself. And normally I wouldn't rely on anyone in my life to do much of anything because that's just the type of human that I've allowed myself to be. But through this year, I've learned that I have to ask for what I need from my community and that there are people who are willing, able, and interested in showing up. It's just that sometimes you have to activate them. And that takes strength. So talking about people again, lesson number 3, don't be afraid to disappoint people who you love and respect. This entire year has been a huge transition, and I'm naturally someone who's a giver. I want to show up even when I am not my best self. Even in speaking now or earlier in the summer when I was at events and I had headaches, or I was super dizzy, or my face was still numb, or I just didn't feel like myself. I'm someone who would still show up and just not tell people what was going on. One of the things I learned this year, especially when you're going through any type of transition, that you can't be afraid to disappoint folks. The folks in the community who really and truly love you, understand, will appreciate you with the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we all have ugly parts of our lives that we go through, whether or not they're online, offline, whatever it is. But you have to make sure that you are pulling it back into yourself and allowing yourself to give yourself that love and respect that you feel like you give so many other people, especially when you're a giver. Last but not least, I feel like kind of summarizes everything together, lesson number 4. And I kind of took a little ode from Oprah, like what I know for sure. So what I know for sure is that you must take actions every day in support of your own best self-interest. And when you say things like this, like I've said this to myself for a long time, but when you think about every single action you take, is it for your good? Even simple things like what we eat. So last night I was out with my team. We had a great time at a local spot. It was a Monday that felt like a Friday. Really good time. And I was sitting there, I was like, okay, I really want to eat. They have this cubed beef dish. I was like, I really want to have the beef. However, we were eating dinner at like 9, 10 o'clock at night. I knew what I was going to feel like in the morning and that I had a 6:30 a.m. makeup call. So I got fish, because it would make me feel lighter. I made a decision in my own best self-interest to make sure that the momentary of me having my favorite dish wasn't going to take over a whole day of me recording and having to be dressed and all the things. Making decisions in my own best self-interest, ordering groceries so I have what I need and I'm not just Uber eating whatever comes to my mind. Making sure that I go to bed on time, or you know what, I spend the extra money to get an Uber because I know that I'm too tired or I may have a headache. I know one of the biggest things this year, making decisions in my own best self-interest, meant letting go of a lot of people, places, and things that didn't serve me. If I hung out with someone that didn't feel good, I'm not going to do it again. If I purchased something I didn't like, I returned it. I guarded my time, my space, my energy ruthlessly to make sure that I was set up for success. In this season, I have another episode that kind of talks a little bit more about who's in my circle. And my friends joke and say that I'm a little bougie. I'm probably a lot bougie. And I think that who's in my circle, you'll see I have a good team. But I don't look at it as being bougie per se. I look at it as, this is what I need to thrive. And it's within my means. This is what makes me feel good. This is what lets me be the optimal person to sit in front of a camera and tell y'all all my daggone business to an extent. So every day, I think that's the biggest choice that I'm making, is making sure, is this in my own best self-interest? Because it needs to be in my best self-interest before it's in anyone else's. Let me know if you want to hear things that are more personal, because I know that I definitely glossed over 3 big things that we could spend 3 different podcasts talking about if we're really honest. Let me know, what do you want to hear? Do you want to hear more personal things? We're recording in my home this season, which is so personal for me. But I'm doing my best to share and be transparent, because it also feels good. It feels good to be a little bit more me, so you get to know a little bit more of my personality, and not just I'm the person who's helping you negotiate your salaries and go get that money, because we will do that. There's going to be a lot of that this season. But I also thought that I should show just a little bit more of me. So with that, I'm going to let y'all go. This was enough vulnerability for one episode of this podcast. Yes, please and thanks. And may your next move be in your own best self-interest. Talk soon.